Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the return of the mmjhl podcast here on G Show Productions, brought to you by our newest sponsor in Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. Episode 1 of Season 2, the start of what is to be a long season, but a season that I'm sure is going to fly by the time we're at the end of it. Last time, I was in a hockey rink watching a game. Was actually the Game 5 finals between the St. James Junior Canucks and the Pembina Valley Twisters last year at the Civic Center. Or not last year, but last season, this spring, as St. James hoisted their third championship in a row. Their vets reported to training camp this week. I believe it was yesterday. The Stonewall Jets started their training camp this week, and preseason also started last Sunday in the with two games that haven't been reported on the website yet, as you can see there. I'm not sure what's going on there right now, but I have got the scores reported to me myself, as I did some digging and asked the coaches of these teams how it went. And for the Fort Garry Twins, they defeated the Charleswood Hawks 4-3, and for the defending champion St. James Junior Canucks, they were down 3-0 to the River East Royal Knights, but St. James would come back, scoring 4 unanswered to take the preseason opener 4-3. We'll have more on the schedule coming up, as it's not fully updated on the website. There's a preseason tournament happening this weekend at East End Arena, where I know there's a few teams that I've seen are going to play 3 games, and I'm not sure if that's going to go for all 10 teams in the league, but we'll get you updated with that as the show goes along. As for our first guest, we got 2 guests joining the show today, as you might have seen on the opening graphic screen of this episode. It's going to be Pat Power to start things off, head coach of the Stonewall Jets. He took over with his staff, going over from Fort Garry to Stonewall after a year to coach the Stonewall Jets team, trying to get them back into the playoffs. They just fell short by 1 point. I had a chance to ask Pat about the experience last year, what it's like this year, having what is 19 players set to return to a Stonewall Jets roster looking to make it back into the playoffs, and much more here on the mmjhl podcast, brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. Enjoy, everybody. The team's into training camp, had the first skate last night. How'd it go? You know, the returning players coming back, the rookies, everyone coming out last night.
It was good. It was a good skate. We got about 40 guys at camp, so we actually have a pretty good number, which is nice to see. So, a good mix of returning guys. Only losing 4 guys last year, so we got pretty much every guy back. And then adding, 20-ish new faces into camp is going to make for some good competition. So it was a good start last night.
Yeah, could you sense that and see that intensity in camp last night for those players competing for, what is likely to be 4 spots?
Absolutely. I think maybe some of our veteran guys, maybe even a little taken back that there was that many guys there, right? Whole smokes, there's some guys here that are here to maybe take my spot. So it's that good internal competition is a good thing to have, especially this early.
Was that something that you saw last year in terms of the strength in those numbers, or has it kind of stayed the same in terms of the turnout at tryouts?
I would definitely say we're higher this year. Definitely a little bit higher this year, and I think that just speaks for the steps that we took last year till now, right?
Yeah, and just taking a look at the 2022-2023 season, I mean, that team only won 12 games last season. You, of course, were with Fort Garry the year before, going over to Stonewall, and the team started off winless through, I believe it was the first 6 or so games. Then you guys started to win some games, competed for that last playoff spot until the very end, losing in a heartbreaker against the River East Royal Knights in overtime in the last game of the season to eliminate you guys. But take me through last season, what that experience was like, taking over for a team that came dead last the year before.
It was like you said, we started off a little slow, so there was definitely that feeling out process, right? I think guys were, you know, the season before didn't go their way, and a whole new coaching staff was in, and we kind of came in with a little more structure, maybe a little more accountability, and had that feeling out process. And I think kind of once guys realized, okay, these guys are here, they want us to succeed. I think guys kind of saw that and started buying in, right? Like, we made a few moves early on, and I think maybe some guys in the dressing room were a little maybe caught off guard, or and I said, hey, I better pull my socks up here, or else I'm going to be out the door too, right? So just kind of started doing that kind of late October, early November, and then guys started buying in and got pretty hot. And yeah, it came right down to the end there. That actual last game, we were already actually mathematically out of it, but yeah. So we ended the season with 19 wins, and it was a step forward from last year. Obviously, they're still disappointed not making the playoffs, and I think that this year our goal is obviously to take another step forward and make the playoffs and make some noise in the playoffs.
For yourself, you got experience the season before in the playoffs with that Fort Garry team losing in a heartbreaker to the St. Vital Junior Victorias in game seven of that series. But taking over for a team last year where it was a whole different experience where this team was fighting to make it into a playoff spot basically all season long. I guess take me through what it's really been like coaching in the so far through the past two seasons.
It's been good. My experience has been good both in Fort Garry and in Stonewall. I've come in to this league. I'll be honest, I wasn't too familiar with it before. Most of my time was kind of spent in the MJ there before, but now that I'm in the league, I've gotten a little more comfortable year after year. And we're going into camp. This is our third year, all three of us on the staff, and and Chris, our third year. So our whole staff is a little more, I'd say, seasoned, right? So we're not going into it, maybe a better game plan going forward than maybe years past. And you brought up last year about going to have a slow start, and I think maybe I'm not saying we let it slide because nobody wants to let that slide, but your new team, new coaches, okay, that feeling out process. Where this year, there's no feeling out process. We want to hit the, I think it's September 27th is the home opener or first game on the road maybe, and we want to hit the ground running, right? So there's no gap like that this year. I think it's more we're just a little maybe just a little more prepared, a little more seasoned every year you're doing it, right?
Has most of this coaching staff been together before getting into the or did you guys just join up 2 years ago?
Myself and Chris were in OCN together, and we actually coached senior together before that too. So we did that and stuff like that. Sorry, my
Yeah,
dog's right
no,
here.
no worries, no worries. Great to see the furry friends coming out on the pilot of the MMJHL podcast for season two here. But yeah, I mean, just more continuity heading into this year again, more experience for, this coaching staff and the rest of this team. 19 projected returning skaters. Gonna have a stud back and a guy like Peyton Bateman, a lot of good players all around, but the excitement, I guess, heading into this season with this type of group, knowing that there's going to be that extra hunger to not only make the team with so many players competing for spots, but knowing you just missed out on the spot to make the playoffs last year.
Absolutely, I think that kind of put a bitter, as close as we were, and the steps we took forward. You're almost left with a bitter taste being that that close. Like pretty much from Christmas on last year, we were playing playoff hockey every night. It was desperate hockey, right? So I feel like we got a little bit of a taste of it, but to come up short was disappointing for sure. And then we got guys like Beatty back, Hinger back, Stovey, Stu. Like those are leaders on this team, Coleman. Like those are going to be the leaders this year that need to take that step up. And they're even still young guys, even right. There's still some that are still 18 and 19, which is fine, but they're going to be leaned on, and that desperate hockey is pretty much going to start from day one.
This season, quite an opportunity to start again and try to make it back to the playoffs for this Stonewall team. A lot of talent coming back, as we've already talked about. But what's going to be the goal here throughout, I guess, preseason, what the coaching staff is going to be looking for ahead of what's going to be a long 45-game season before playoffs?
I think for us, we're preseason. We're looking to work out the kinks. Like I think, like I said last year, going into our second year, maybe we waited a little long getting into some systems and stuff like that. You're your tactical stuff, maybe your game plans. Where I think from day one we got to hit the ground running here. We know what we have. We know the guys that are coming in. They're gonna get some preseason games under their belt. And like I said, starting on that Friday the 27th, it's we want to have we want to be rolling. We want to be ready to go from day one. I'm not saying we weren't ready. I'm just saying no. I think we're going to be a little more prepared this year, ready to go from day one.
Right. And, trying to think back, I'm sure I think we did cover the Stonewall Jets last year at St. Vital. And from what I remember, y'all got players that can play. That's for sure. And it's going to be exciting to see those returning players coming back. I guess, how would you describe for the viewers out there that haven't watched the Stonewall Jets team play in terms of how they're going to play this season?
We're going to be a team that plays tough. We're a tough team. We like to finish our checks. I wouldn't say we got we got guys that are got some finesse and goal scoring, but we're a team that's going to work hard and 1 through 20 on any given night are going to score goals and compete. That's what I tell my guys. All I ask is every night we're going to compete, and we're a team that is going to bring consistency and compete 45 nights of the year this year, and that's our goal.
Yeah, and can't wait to see it this season. I believe we're going to have some games on the schedule in Stonewall this year, so that's going to be really exciting. But the only preseason game on the schedule for you guys, as per the MMJHL website, is against the St. Boniface Riels, 12:30 p.m. this Sunday coming up. Going up against a team last year that made it to the Final Four, not losing much talent themselves. Not sure how the lineups are going to look like, but what's going to be the goal heading into that preseason game, tuning up for the season opener on the 27th?
Yeah, so this weekend there's a preseason tournament hosted by Transcona. So we'll actually have 3 games this weekend, 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. So kind of our game plan is give some young guys a chance that maybe we haven't seen that are probably going to go back to high school or U18 for another year, but give them a game or two, see how they do at this level, and then you mix in a handful of vets to get their feet wet right off the hop too, right? And
Yeah.
as the weekend probably goes on, maybe a bit of a heavier vet lineup, and come Monday, trim down, and then we got 2 exhibition games the following weekend against PV, a home and home. So pretty much by next weekend, I would say probably next Sunday we're probably dressing our full our pretty close to full lineup that we're going to be playing night one.
It's all coming so fast, and yeah, excited for that tournament this weekend at East End. I might see you around there. Pat, might make my way down since it's not that far away from where I'm living at. But you take care. Can't wait to see what the Stonewall Jets team can do this season, or will do this season under you and your coaching staff and your guys' second year. Best of luck this weekend coming up and the season ahead. Thanks for joining the show.
Appreciate it, Graham. Thank you.
And Pat Power, head coach of the Stonewall Jets, joining this edition of the MMJHL podcast, brought to you by Terrico McCann Fasteners and Tools, Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. The Stonewall Jets will be playing in 3 games this weekend in the preseason tournament hosted by the Transcone Railer Express at East End Arena. Now, I've done some digging during while that interview was going, and there's only going to be 6 teams out of the 10 participating in this year's tournament. As for the Stonewall Jets, their game action, their schedule, it has not been announced yet by the team on their social media, but as Pat said, they're going to be playing 3 games, and then they're going to be having some exhibition later on as well. Of course, taking on St. Boniface, the Riels, tomorrow, and I believe there's going to be some more to be added onto the schedule for Stonewall. But we'll keep you posted on that. We'll give you the most accurate updates here throughout the year on the MMJHL podcast. But yeah, the 6 teams that are going to be participating in this week's East End preseason tournament are going to be Transcona, the St. Boniface Riels, St. Vital Victorias, Pembina Valley, Stonewall, and Fort Garry. All teams are going to play 3 games. And yeah, Don Gale, the president of the Transcone Railer Express, had a nice conversation with him during while that interview with Pat was going. But yeah, he says it's a chance for teams to go with smaller benches if they want. They can use a good mix of vets and rookies. And by game three of the tournament for these teams, he says they're usually, running full benches. So it's going to be exciting if you have a chance to make it down to East End this weekend to see some preseason action, to see these teams in their infancy here as they continue to make decisions ahead of opening day on Thursday, September 26th on their final rosters. This is going to be a good weekend to get to check it out. So be sure to check out mmjhl.ca for more information on their schedule, the standings this season, and all things to do with the league. And of course, follow along here on the MMJHL podcast as we'll update you on as much news as we possibly can. But had a chance to sit down and speak with newest GM of the St. Boniface Riels and Tyler Moore a few weeks ago. Decided to use it for this interview, for this episode this week, meaning the interview that I did with him. It's a bit longer, over 20 minutes, but you got a good insight into how Tyler thinks as a hockey mind, his expectations for this season coming up, his excitement to be able to work with Paul Castus and this newer coaching staff for this team with the department of former head coach now for the St. Boniface Riels and Zach Franco, and former head coach and GM, that is, for the St. Boniface Riels team. But yeah, had a chance to have a great conversation with Tyler. You don't want to miss it. It's coming up next year on the MMJHL podcast, brought to you by Make Cannon Fasteners and Tools, Terraco, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, and Goaltenders. Tyler, you become the newest GM of the St. Boniface Riels, taking over for Zach Franco, of course, after he goes out and takes a job in the WHL. You've done some work with this team in the past, this organization. Take me into what the decision was for yourself to accept the GM job this season for the Riels.
Yeah, was an assistant coach last year. Friends through the hockey world and with Paul, Sean, and both Jay as well, and Jay. So I think this year, with Zach going, Paul and I have coached a lot of ball hockey together in the past, and between us two and Sean Christensen, we run a very competitive ball hockey team, which is a lot of fun out of Winnipeg in Manitoba. Yeah. So, like having Paul focus, strictly on the head coach, and I deal with a lot of the let's just call it back administrative work. Obviously as managing a team, but getting to learn the budgets, etc. That's something I've always been interested in, as like I GM'd as well as coached those ball hockey teams. So there's familiarity between Paul, Sean, and myself, with me kind of having that role, Paul focusing on the head coaching side.
Right on. I guess how exciting is it now? Of course, you've done ball hockey. Now you're getting to do it at the junior level with the team. Of course, like you said, you were assistant coach last year. Now you're into the managing side of things. But I guess you've kind of spoken to already. But how cool do you think it is to have this opportunity now, all these years later, to do this at a high level?
Yeah, it's I'm very grateful. I've always wanted to give back to the sport, to be honest. And so, I played my junior in Portage and my college at Queen's University. I lived in Toronto, and it was not quite the right opportunity or time at that moment. But when I moved back to Winnipeg, being able to give back is exactly what I wanted to do. So when it comes to the GM, we spoke a little bit about it last year with Franks and whatnot. And he showed me a bit of the ropes as well. Yeah. So I did have a bit of a pickup there. And then when Franks departed, which it was sudden and all of course, and well deserved. I kind of jumped right into the role, maybe earlier than anyone had planned. But that's just an opportunity, and very excited with the Riels. It's a great organization, great group of kids. Really, it's a tight knit group. And then the staff, again, we all have trust in one another. We've worked together in some capacity before, albeit maybe not ice hockey. Still, managing teams, meeting after hours, takes a lot of work to go into, junior, never mind just the ball hockey was one thing, but you do junior, it's a whole different level. And it's a good way to give back, I feel, and very passionate about it. So yeah, that's essentially, how excited I am.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that, of course, last year you kind of got to learn some of the ropes of this position from Zach. I guess, you talked about him and how, you think it's well deserved him getting this position. He did a huge thing in terms of, I guess, turning the tide of this Riels team, changing the culture a bit. What things, I guess, are you taking from Zach? What you kind of learned from him from this past year, and what you're, I guess, looking to apply that to your day to day as the GM of the team coming up?
Yeah, I'll start just by saying it's exactly right on changing the culture. I don't know much about the year before last. I know the record wasn't great. I know things don't turn on a dime, but I know last year the culture was outstanding, uh, which I'm not surprised, having known Zach prior to coaching with him last year, um, as well as Sean and Jay. So, we have this amazing culture. So the things I'm taking from him, the things I learned is, we really turned, responsibility, accountability, and coming together within the dressing room, right? One common goal. It is junior hockey. It's supposed to be fun, and we always keep that in mind. But to achieve the goals that we want to achieve, hard work is necessary. And these are young men, and so to teach them accountability and togetherness, I think is very important, as well as respect. Um, and it seems seamless. I'm sure it wasn't from the year before to that year. It seems seamless jumping in last year, because I know they didn't have the most successful year the year prior, but it seems seamless. I jumped right in last year, and it started great, and it got better even throughout the year. So I'm just going to maintain that, and with expectations, it's just we'll set that with the coaching staff as we come into camp here on Thursday.
Before we continue talking about the Reals, I want to get to know you a bit more, your background in hockey. Of course, you were an assistant coach last year, now a GM. You know a bunch of people in the hockey world, the hockey scene here in Manitoba, but who are yourself, Tyler, I guess, in the hockey world, you're in terms of the positions you had prior to these past few years?
Yeah, that's a great question. Doesn't count for much, but I did assistant coach way back when I played in Portage with PCI. It's a high school team out of Portage the Prairie. I was there in grade 12, and then when I was, I guess, graduated from PCI and then St. Paul's, I coached there, but that doesn't count for much. But I did, when I came back from Toronto, maybe 3-ish years ago, I did 2 years at St. Paul's under a fabulous coach, Puchnik. He's a very, very good coach. Drafted to the NHL. You can check that out yourself. So he knew what he was doing, and having gone to St. Paul's, I said yes. It sounded like a lot of fun, and him, Sean Burr, and another friend of mine, Liam Bilton, and myself, we were the staff. So I learned a lot about coaching. Learned a lot about kids that are just about trying to get into junior.
Yeah.
And then when the opportunity arose to join the Riels, I jumped on it partly because, again, I know the staff of Zach, Sean, and Jay, right?
Right.
And so it's like, oh, that sounds like a lot of fun, but also because, high school does run until 5 p.m.
Yeah.
There's 3:30, and then you kind of practice then. And with my availability with my work commitments, it was no longer becoming feasible. So it was seamless in that sense, kind of the right opportunity at the right time, because I would have to stop coaching St. Paul's. So yeah, I jumped on the junior side. So that's kind of my coaching side of it. When it comes to, ball hockey, that's something that I have a passion for. I know Paul does, and Sean does as well. And, had the opportunity to coach, some fabulous players, fabulous men. There's NHL draft picks on the teams, and a lot of guys. Goody from the Raiders, Rory Neal, that comes to mind. Jack Alexiak last year, just a bunch of guys that I coached when they were like 15 and 16. Yeah. So, and same thing with on the Riels. Like I coached Trot and Sam Alsip. And so, that's kind of my coaching experience. The Team Manitoba youth, and then this year the Team Manitoba men's team. So, running that program. So that's my coaching career. Playing wise, I did the old Rangers, Monarchs, Wild, Portage the Prairie, Terriers, and then CIS at the Queens Gales.
Oh, nice.
So,
yeah. So quite a bit there. You've had a chance to experience the sport at different levels, and I think it's an interesting point that you brought up of your time in St. Paul's, getting to coach kids essentially, depending on what grade they're in, are going to be going into juniors. So along with that experience that you had a chance to firsthand experience that in dealing with that, in terms of now being the GM, I know you talked about the numbers side of things, but the GM is going to still have to make moves. How do you feel like, I guess, your past in that sense will translate it into this year, building off of what Franco and I guess some of the former staff have built?
Yeah, definitely. Zach's always a call away if I need any mentorship. He's a friend. Went to his wedding this summer, so that there's a call right there if there's any advice on how to handle situations. But Jay's done it before as well, so I do have good people around me. So I'll learn through anything I don't yet know. But managing a team, putting a team together, it's always been something I wanted to do in the sense of you kind of sometimes see some areas the team can improve and some areas that the team's very strong.
Yeah.
And having coached, you try to, in high school, you can't really do much about that.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about the opportunity to maybe, fill those holes, whatever it is, or at the same time, find strength of a team or an identity and add to it. Or if something's missing in the identity, go out and try to fix that. So, work very closely with the coaching staff though, because I trust Paul before having his first practice, as having a working relationship and a personal relationship with him. So, when he says he needs a certain type of player, I'll just do my job and go out and get him.
You've brought up Paul a lot, and I think it's a good time to talk about him in terms of him becoming that new head coach for this team, taking over for Zach, of course, since he was both the GM and the head coach. Paulie's had a chance to be the assistant coach of the Victorias for the past 4 seasons, has gone through a bunch of different experiences himself. They went on a huge finals run 2 years ago. You talked about how you've known from the past, you have a working relationship, personal relationship with him. How do you see this coaching dynamic being, as well as how you feel that he'll do?
That's actually a good point. I forgot about that run they went on 2 years ago. I actually came and him and Jeff asked me to come check it out and see, how was at that time because high school was done. So I was actually going to games and watching games and telling them things between periods during the playoffs, actually during that run. So I got a little bit of a taste for it there, and I think the high levelness of the game is partly also what drew me to the something I didn't mention prior. I forgot about that experience. So
Yeah,
getting to watch them go all the way through, and doing a little video for them, and then pointing out the items that I see on other teams' tactics or whatnot. But yeah, working with Paul, I mean, he loves it when you challenge his ideas in private, of course, because you don't play devil's advocate for devil's advocate's sake, but it's more so like tell me what you think, and then he'll make the final decision, right? So it's actually going to be seamless with Frank's because that was a very similar way. So with Franco's very same idea where it's like, hey Sean, hey Tyler, like what do you think about this? How do you think we should tackle this? So he's definitely not a dictator by any means, but much more collaborative, and that's great. And I know anywhere he's played or anytime I've coached with him, he's instilled a good culture. So I have much faith that the great culture that we've built in the Riels under Zach Franco's leadership will continue under Paul.
Yeah, and getting into that, a few more questions for you here, Tyler. But when I had a chance to speak to Zach a few times, one thing kept coming back, and it was simply, if you don't want to be here, then don't be here. For the players that want to be here, simply like you're going to put in the work and you're going to want to be a Riel. Obviously that's brought this team great success. They missed the playoffs the year before he took over, made it eighth, took a game against the St. James Canucks. Of course, you were part of the team last year that improved to third place, made to their first Final Four appearance in in quite some time since the franchise's only championship in 2014-15. We've talked about it so much already about how this coaching staff and this management group is tight knit already. But what's going to be the keys you feel to following up and allowing that culture to continue to grow and get stronger this year?
Well, that's definitely one thing that what you said there that Frank says, if you don't want to be a Riel, then you don't have to be. I've always felt that a lot of people still play the game just because they feel they have to, or a lot of people when I grew up, they did, in particular around that age. Right. If you want to come to the rink, enjoy it, be part of a good group of friends, playing hockey's fun. And part of that being fun is competing hard to a common goal, right? And so that's something that I know will continue this year. Setting expectations, we set it as a staff, but you also set it with the leadership group and then the rest of the team. So, it's still very early, so to be determined, but ultimately, we know we have a good team. We know the team are tight knit. We know who they are, how hard they like to work. And we make sure we reward them with making sure that it's fun to come to the rink. We still maintain accountability. We still maintain, hey, like, you're young men. But that's just it. If you don't want to be a Riel, you don't have to be. Just come, let us know. And what do you want to be? Right? We'll make it work. I don't want to ruin careers. And if someone's not having fun in our organization, I will do what I can to make sure they have fun wherever they want to be. Right? We want to make sure kids are still playing. So.
No, for sure. No doubt about that. This team was very fun to watch last year. Of course, losing some pieces, two pieces that came in via trade. I'm not sure if you guys are getting O'Sullivan back, since I know that was a loan last year, but gonna have a good group of returning players. The talent is, should always be pretty strong in the St. Boniface area with all the different areas. And I think we've been seeing that in the past few years for sure, that really taking shape with the right direction of management and this coaching staff the past few years. But heading into camp, I guess, thoughts on the overall team? You've already kind of pointed to it, but could you expand on it?
Yeah, we are getting O'Sullivan back, so pretty excited about that. Had the opportunity to play against him, and I know what kind of goalie he is. It's quite a good goalie, so definitely happy, and a great kid as well, young man. To be honest, I feel very fortunate to being part of a team that, we have a great guy in Alex Dom. He's a great goaltender and a great person, great kid. And we had Howarth, who, mature kid, great kid. And now we get O'Sullivan, who to me has a demeanor much similar to Howarth so far from my brief conversations with him. So very lucky to have, that's two stable guys and two very guys I feel like I can lean on, which is great. And it seems like they have good maturity back there. And then, losing guys like Nielsen and Hines, that's definitely difficult, but it's this opportunity. We had a lot of depth last year, and that was part of our success. And, we have a lot of it again this year. And it's a lot of opportunity for some guys who, have been nipping at the bit for different opportunities, whether it be power play or penalty kill, try to get your 4 more minutes of ice time, right? Yeah. So it's a great opportunity for them to step in. And, I think they'll do very well. Then we have, good backbone of defense. So really looking forward to, going out and playing a good structured style of hockey and win some games.
Yeah, right on. And this team played very fast last year. Love to get on the forecheck and really get in teams' kitchens. Do you feel like the style is going to be the same this year in terms of how this Riels club is going to play?
Yeah, I think it's definitely fair to say that, Paul will put his own stamp on how he feels, right? But aggressive style of hockey is definitely a common theme. And other teams have coached with him, so I wouldn't, expect anything a bit different, but he'll put his own stamp on the team, which I'm very excited to get going with him on. Camp starts this Thursday. But yeah, it'll continue a very similar style. Again, we have fortunate to have two very good goaltenders back there, a very strong D-core, and some good vets up front, and then some young guys who, in their second year in the league are just nipping at the bit for some opportunity. And so just maintain that aggressiveness and that speed, and I think we'll finish, do pretty well.
Yeah. Last year, I mean, it was always a treat to watch this team play. We even got to broadcast this team during the playoffs near the end, and at some games at St. Vital. And looking at the stats, like very good defensive team throughout the season. And you look on paper, the offensive talent was really good, but one area where this team was lacking, I guess, was kind of, I guess, on that power play in terms of putting a lot of pucks in the net. This team did by committee, but is that something you guys are kind of going to be looking for, I guess, heading into camp is where you can fill those holes in terms of adding more goal scoring, or is it just kind of looking for the same thing, looking to really go for balance throughout all the lineup, or is it something else even?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the defensive stats, as you mentioned, showcase that culture, in my view. That straight commitment to players playing the game the right way and learning that if you play the game that way, the real way, your team will have more success. And any team I've played on, winning is fun. So you want to win games. So that really is a testament to that culture change. I think that you mentioned over 2 years that Franco was able to instill with Sean and I. You need to score goals to win, and we know that. And especially in the round with Pembina Valley, we didn't score enough goals, but we had a lot of opportunities and just didn't quite get it done. So I think this year, we'll definitely try to find ways as a staff to support our players with more opportunity to score. I know we have the capabilities of doing so up there. So it's just getting them in the right situations, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that leads to a follow-up on that in terms of how great these players are when we're talking about the Davises and I mean the Hines of the past. He won't be there, of course, but there's a lot of great players who have offensive ability on this team. Do you feel like, that's going to be a huge part of your success, like anyone's success would be, is those vets taking that even further next step to, I guess achieving what they want in their hockey development?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, like you said, I am a data guy, and the data says we didn't score enough, and I know some guys will take that hard. And I know when I played as a forward, I did. So, but we have, you speak of Davis, and I just want to say we have he's one of the best leaders I've been able to coach, and amongst a bunch of leaders, we have a lot of leaders in the room with A's and without A's as well. So Matthew Trott's another one that comes to mind, and you got Noah Keating, Carson Dubois. These are all guys. Ethan Alsip. Everyone leads, and I think that's again part of that culture. Everyone has their opportunity to lead by example, step up. It's not a one-man show on the leadership side, but people do, lead the way, and Connor Davis is a guy that definitely does that. When it comes to, like you said, having big years, these guys are last year of junior for a lot of these guys. So I know they're committed, and I know they're bought in, and I know they're very excited to get going to show everyone what they got.
Last question for you here, Tyler. I mean, you had a chance to be, I guess, involved with it last year in terms of witnessing the crowds get bigger and bigger as the season went along at Southdale for this club. It was quite the story to watch last year, seeing this Riels team having their best season in quite a long time. I guess with the excitement of that energy, along with this culture, the accountability taken into it, this team, their, I guess, motivation heading in and the overall feel of this Riels staff overall for what the expectations are for what should be a big 2024-2025 season.
Yeah. So sorry, you're asking for expectations that we have,
Yeah.
or for the crowds in general?
Just expectations for like what you feel everything's going to bring this year, like the level of play, how the team's going to feed off of the crowd noise and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always nice, when you're winning, you get more crowds. That's just, I think, rule of thumb in the game of hockey. But how you play as well. I know we had a willingness to compete every night, and I wouldn't doubt that would lead to some increased crowds as well, because it's nice to watch a team or cheer for a team that, up a goal, down a goal, they're competing out there, right? But yeah, I'm excited to see what the crowds bring in after a successful year last year. And I expect it to grow throughout the year, particularly when the season gets on and the games mean more at the end of the year. I think that's a common theme in any junior league.
Yep.
So just ask anyone to come on out because the boys will love to have you, and they do feed off the noise. So playing in front of a crowd, from my experience, does give you some let's say energy. So I think the guys will do the same thing, but I will say the guys are internally motivated, and the crowd just adds that almost that cherry on top for what they might.
Tyler Moore, general manager and assistant coach of the St. Boniface Riels, joining this edition of the mmjhl podcast, brought to you by Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, goaltenders, mechanic fasteners and tools, and Terrico. And yeah, Tyler, I didn't mention it throughout the interview, but yeah, and didn't ask him about it, but he's going to be remaining on the staff as a GM, as a assistant coach, as well as being the GM for this year's team, and can't wait to see what he's going to do along with Paul Castus and this whole crew this season. Looking to, I think for them, deep down, their hopes would be delivering this franchise their second championship, looking to build off of last year with the returning players they have, the new ones they're going to be adding in. Getting O'Sullivan back in net, I think, is a huge game changer for them potentially. We'll have to see how things pan out, but yeah, this should be a team that's going to be hard to play against again, a team that should defend pretty well again, and a team that, if they can get a bit more offense, or more offense in general, their chances of making a lot of noise this year is going to be relevant, I think. But as for St. Boniface, they'll be kicking off their preseason this weekend on Saturday against the St. Vital Junior Victorias. Now, the reason why, of course, the schedule is not up on the official website, I think, is because, I'm not sure if it would go on the schedule or not, this showcase, since only 6 teams are participating in this exhibition tournament. But yeah, it's going to be the Transcona Railer Express, like mentioned, the St. Boniface Riels, the St. Vital Junior Victorias, the Pembina Valley Hawks, the Stonewall Jets, and Fort Garry Twins, all playing against each other in 3 games this weekend. And coming up tonight, there's going to be 2 other matchups out of the 4 teams that aren't going to be playing in this tournament, in the St. James Junior Canucks taking on the Charleswood Hawks, and the River East Royal Knights taking on the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. There are some games on the schedule, of course, for that Saturday that are going to be in the showcase, in the East End tournament at East End, hosted by Transcona, like St. Vital versus St. Boniface and St. Boniface versus Stonewall. But as for outside of the tournament, it's going to be the Canucks taking on the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, and the Charleswood Hawks taking on the River East Royal Knights in Sunday's action. As for the Fort Garry Twins, their game is another game that's going to be played in the East End preseason tournament against the Riels at 3:30 p.m. But as for Transcona, they take on the Twins at 12:30 p.m. at East End on Saturday. Then they have 2 games on Sunday against the Vics at 2 p.m. and then against the Pembina Valley Twisters at 5 p.m. For St. Boniface, taking on the Vics, of course, on the Saturday. Then the Stonewall Jets at 12:30 on Sunday, 3:30 against the Twins for St. Vital. That Saturday matchup, as well as another Saturday matchup against the Stonewall Jets. They finish off their preseason tournament against the Railer Express, the host team, on 2 p.m. on Sunday. As for Pembina Valley, they take on the Jets at 2 p.m. on Saturday, against the Twins at 5 p.m. on Saturday, and against the Railers at 5 p.m. on Sunday. And as for Stonewall, they'll have a home-and-home next weekend against Pembina Valley, but yeah, as mentioned, taking on Pembina Valley 2 p.m. this weekend at East End. St. Vital at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, and against St. Boniface at 12:30 p.m. On Sunday. Not sure if these games are going to be uploaded on the website or not, but be sure to check back for all updates on mmjhl.ca, as they'll continue to update their schedule, I'm sure, and they'll have the standings, all the stats, and all you'll need to follow the MMJHL all season long, as well as stay up to date with everything MMJHL hockey here on the official Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast. Regular season play will be kicking off on Thursday, September 26th in the league, as the St. Vital Junior Victorias will be playing at home in the season opener against the Fort Garry Twins. G-Show Productions will have the coverage of that game. Very excited, as this weekend will also be releasing our 2024 portion of our broadcast schedule for this season. The 2025 portion will be coming out near Christmas, so stay tuned for that on our social media pages. But yeah, as for the Stonewall Jets, I saw someone in the comments said they're rooting for them to do well this year, and I think there's a chance that they could make some noise, like Pat Power was talking about. This team's going to be implementing their systems a bit earlier. This weekend they're going to have a chance, like all of these teams in the tournament, to see their potential future players get a chance to look at their younger players as well as their vets, and going with a fuller lineup as the weekend goes along. But yeah, Stonewall had some studs last season. Peyton Bateman being a standout player. This team should have some nice depth this season too. And yeah, looking to obviously start off stronger. They only missed out on the playoffs by 1 point last year, and you gotta kind of think, if it wasn't for that 0-6 start, if they get off to a bit of a better start, do they potentially make it in over the Transcona Railer Express? Well, it's a new season and a new opportunity to be able to make it into the playoffs for Stonewall, as well as the River East Royal Knights. How will all 8 teams that made the playoffs last year fare this year? Will the St. James Junior Canucks become, I think it's the 5th team in MMJHL history to go 4 in a row with championships? They'd be the most recent to do it since the 2011-2012 Charleswood Hawks teams. And speaking of the Hawks and teams like the Victorias and the Riels and all the teams that have kind of, been in the middle of the league and have made their way up to the top half, Pembina Valley as well, is this the year these teams can finally break through. I can't wait to cover it all this season and to update you guys on all the latest happenings surrounding the league. Once we get some game footage, we're going to get some highlights in here. We're going to do some player analysis, some really cool stuff this season on the podcast, so hope you're excited for that. But we're going to take one more transition here before we come back and give you some final words on the MMJHL podcast for season 2, episode 1. Pat, the team's into training. Well, you made it to the end of the MMJHL podcast for the first episode back here for another season, in season 2. I've been your host, Graeme the gshow Forsyth. Thank you to Pat Power and Tyler Moore for joining this edition of the show and being the guest for the inaugural season 2 episode. Thank you to Mid Cannon Fasteners and Tools, Terrico Goaltenders, and our newest sponsor in Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia for sponsoring this edition of the show and being our official platinum and deluxe sponsors this season on G-Show Productions. Thank you to them for their support on us and Manitoba Major Junior Hockey and Manitoba hockey in general. And also, what would the show be without you, the viewer? Thank you for tuning in to this one. Next edition of this show will be coming out next week on Friday. This show will air probably on Fridays until the season starts. I might make a bit of a change since we're going to be doing St. Vital Junior Victoria game days, and they play Thursday consistently. So we might do a podcast where we're on location for those days this season. Might have something cool planned there. But yeah, for now it's going to be airing on Fridays, the next one at least. Stay tuned on our social media pages, as well as on our website at gshow.ca, as we'll have the details and the update for what the time is for that episode coming out at the start of next week. As for all of our podcasts, it's going to be a busy week next week. More MMJHL podcast content to come. We're going to be joined by all new guests, and it's going to be a lot of fun next week on Friday. As the preseason gets going, we'll be here to cover it here next week on Friday. But until then, everybody, I've been your host, once again, Graeme the G-Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, saying peace out and so long. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe out there. Enjoy all this great hockey coming your way. And yeah, we'll see you 7 days from now, everybody. Take care.